Welcome to the Geniuses of Copywriting podcast, a peek into the minds and strategies of the world's greatest copywriters, marketers, and persuasion experts. And now, here's your host, Brian Casangina.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Geniuses of Copywriting podcast. It's a privilege to introduce to you a copywriter who you may not have come across this guy, but you've probably come across his work. So I'd like to introduce Stefan Georgi to the call. Thanks so much for coming on. It's a real pleasure to finally talk face to face with you. How are you today?
I'm good, Brian. Thank you. It's really great to be here.
Yeah. Well, it's my honor to host you because I came across you after being on Justin Goff's list, and he's another copywriter who I've really come across in the last few years, but he's really gaining a lot of respect. And you did some stuff with him at TNC, which we'll get into later. But Justin's somebody who I've discussed a few times with other copywriters, and that's kind of how I found your work. So I know that you've crushed it in a lot of areas, a lot of online sort of websites and offers and that. So let's talk a bit about that today. So can you start by giving us a bit of your background and where you've come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with direct response copywriting in, I guess, 2011. So it's like, to me, it feels like a long time at this point, but yeah. I suppose, compared to some of these guys, I'm still fairly new. And, I'd always enjoyed writing. I'd always been creative. And really, for me, I've told the story a few times, so I won't do the really long version. But basically, my wife is also a copywriter. And when I first met her, I was at a poker table in Las Vegas, and somebody asked her what she did. She says, I'm a writer, and I wanted to talk with her more. So I was like, what kind of writer? She said, I'm a copywriter. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And I grabbed my iPhone 1 or whatever I had, and I Googled what's a copywriter, because I had no idea. Yeah. And so that was my first introduction to copy. And then, over time, though, I went and took a job in South Florida with a Fortune 500 company doing like an outside sales job. And it was a really good job for a guy in his like early 20s, or I guess early to mid 20s. But I'd come home after spending all day in the hot Florida sun, and I would make like $200 a day, before taxes and all that. And she was like in her pajamas drinking a beer, and she'd made $1,000 or $2,000 in the same day. And so I kind of realized like, wow, like why am there's a better way. It was that aha moment of, wow, there's a better way. There's something that I could potentially be, doing it. And at the time there was definitely the whole digital nomad kind of that dream in my head of, we could travel. I could be working from the beach. I could be working from coffee shops, and it turns out I have like an office and just come into my office every day. I'm not as much of a digital. And if I travel, I bring an extra monitor if I'm going to work while I'm traveling, because
well, that's pretty serious.
Yeah, it is. But, it's just something where it's not like, some people do it that way, but for me, it ended up being more stable. And I have a bad habit of trying to build really large companies, which can be good or bad, but there's a lot of times where I can overcomplicate things, where, copy is just, the beautiful thing about copywriting is you can actually work from anywhere in the world and, make a great living doing it. And so I started writing copy. I put a thing on like a Warrior Forum for Warriors for Hire. And I think my sales letter offer was like $150 for a sales letter. And I, woke up and had like $300 in my PayPal account, and I was like, oh my God, again, I can make money writing. And from there, I, the abbreviated version would be, I just started writing letters for people and had some success. And then these guys out of Romania hired me for originally survival, and I wrote some really nice survival offers for them that did pretty well. And then one of the partners in that business moved over to the health side and asked me to write a health offer, which at the time I'd actually never written health before. And I wrote one. I think the first one was a diabetes one I think they called it Diabetes Protocol or something like that. And ended up just killing it on ClickBank and doing tens and tens of millions of dollars. And as soon as it started, they saw kind of the success there. They asked me to write more health offers for them, and had this whole kind of compensation scheme where the more I produced for them, the more I got compensated. So like if I wrote like 4 sales letters in a month, I might make like $4,000 or $5,000, which sounds crazy, but like, right. But if I wrote 10 sales letters in a month, I could make $70,000, which obviously is a massive difference. And they were going for this blockbuster model of let's put out a bunch of stuff and see what, works and what sticks and everything. And so throughout that time, I found a kind of a process for writing good copy very quickly. And because you have to, if you write 10 sales letters in a month, right, you've got to, I mean, it's absurd and not really sustainable, but I did that.
Don't worry.
Yeah. It was not super, sustainable, but I did it for several months, and a bunch of them just became these massive, kind of controls. And this is probably 13, 14 into 15. And they basically at one point on ClickBank, for the top 10 offers on ClickBank, like 9 of them I had written. And then, eventually they got kicked off ClickBank because they were aggressive health offers, and they moved to software projects and, had success there. And so did that. And then in 2015, decided to start my own health supplement company, which I did, called Holy Land Health, which first year kind of struggled, not because of the copy, but just because going from writing copy to running an entire supplement company, there's challenges. And so, we grossed like $1 million in the first year, but lost a bunch of money. But then the second year, figured it out, scaled it with affiliates, and got it to, 20 million plus in revenue, and which was great. And then at the same time, started launching other health supplement offers with other partners, because I feel like I really had this sort of model and template down, and just had a bunch of winners there. And today, I mostly, write some copy for clients, kind of not pretty kind of high end stuff. Like I'm generally not for hire, but for the right partners. And I have a product or a program called Copy Accelerator with Justin Goff, where we're training and teaching people how to write copy. I'm sharing my method and processes. And I have a consulting company that kind of does a little bit more of a done for you approach for some of our clients. But to be completely honest, I'm sort of getting away from that, because it's a headache having to do all of the aspects of funnel building when I can just write copy. So my main focus is really just on writing copy and teaching and training people to write copy.
So you've had an amazing track record, a lot of successes in some of these niches that you've been in. I mean, some of your ClickBank results, just amazing. And so you don't meet too many of these people soon. There's people like Rob Weiser, who's a friend of mine, who has crushed it for a long time, and there's you as well. But you mentioned something. You mentioned about the speed of copywriting, because when we sit down to do a project, if I quote somebody for a sales page, I'm going to be quoting them an absolute minimum of 2 weeks if I know that subject inside out, and there's very little research to be done. More like 3 to 4 in most cases. That's probably why I've write a lot more emails than I do sales pages. I try and steer away from those things. I like writing emails. When I write emails, I find that I can write a similar number of words a lot faster, and I don't know why that is. So I'm interested in your viewpoint on this. How do you write so fast?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of it goes down to the process, which is the RMBC method, or not again, I don't know if I've really brought it up yet, but that stands for Research, Mechanism, Brief, and Copy. And so it's something I kind of created over time, working with the information publishers in Romania, and having to do so much volume and scale. And I'll get into that in a second. But by the way, I still quote people like 8 weeks. But then, I'm like the prototypical copywriter where, I'm dicking around for a couple of weeks and then get after it. And I'm working on being even faster with my turnaround times. But so still even in the last month, I've written 2 sales letters that both have gotten incredible feedback. Both have been, one was like maybe 6,000 words. One was like 12,000. I cut down to 10,000, but both of those, I did write them in a week. And which is also, as a note before I get into the process, if you're a copywriter and you can do that, like, I don't know if I really want to, but given that I charge like $50,000 to $100,000 just to write a sales letter for a person, which I do, right? If I can write one a week, right? That means like right there, I can make $200,000 to $400,000 a month, like just writing sales copy. And the actual hours of it, I time myself for the one I did that was 12,000 words cut down to 10,000 words. And so, from start to finish, I even recorded myself doing it, and then I'm including it as a bonus for my Copy Accelerator people where they can check it out. But it was 17 hours. So actually, right, in theory, I could write 2 a week, which is, and I've done this in the past with these guys. So then you're like, all right, wow. So charge 50,000. So again, if you're doing 50,000 and you do 2 a week, that's 100,000 a week, 400,000. If you charge $100,000 per, that's 800,000. I mean, it's crazy how much you can make just from writing. However, of course, do you want to write that much? Do you want to, and not only that, but having something on the back end royalties. So you're writing fewer offers, but you're making potentially more money. There's factors like that at play, but it's interesting from a copy perspective. Go ahead. If you had something to say.
No, sorry. Well, you were going to ask something?
No, I was going to go into the RMBC thing, but I didn't want to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Because I've heard your RMBC thing before, but I like to dive deeper into that for sure, especially for the listeners out there. But back on the speed of writing, that's very interesting to me because I don't know if you do this, but I wouldn't. In my own businesses, my personal preference is not to, set that expectation of such fast writing with a client, because things can happen and things can get derailed and creative process as well. So like if I've never timed myself writing a sales page, so I love the scientific way that you've gone about that. If I sit down and write the thing, it probably that takes me a week or so of time, working every day. I don't know how many hours, probably more than yours. But do you set that expectation with a client that you'll be working on their stuff really quickly, or do you sort of add more time in to get started? Well, you mentioned that you stuff around for a week or two and procrastinate. So, I think, and I'm the biggest guilty offender of that too, for sure. So how do you communicate that to the client?
Yeah, I typically, and that's the danger of as I'm becoming more public, where I'm doing podcasts and talking about my speed, is when I take on clients, my fear is that they'll have that expectation. But again, I typically will tell them 8 weeks, so like 2 months, because I'd rather do that and then know that I can basically meet it. Or, in the worst case scenario, if I'm an extra week late, nobody really ever cares about 9 weeks. But I'd rather do that. And then if I happen to just blast through it faster, then, they're happy and I'm happy.
Better. Yeah.
But nobody really complains about 8 weeks because that's pretty typical. And, being on the other side of it, I've had times where I've hired copywriters for my agency, like freelancers, and tried to test them out because, again, even though I can write all this copy, there's been times where it's like, well, I don't want to have to be the bottleneck. I'd like to find other good copywriters. Pretty much without fail, they'll tell you whatever time they tell you, it's usually like an extra month. I mean, it's at least a couple of weeks. Just today, I was looking at that for an offer that we have on the agency side where it's doing well. The writer did a very good job. But, I was looking back to the original conversation and he was like, I'm going to have this to you in 2 weeks. And I was like, great. And then you just see me following up week after week after week to the point where, in my head, I'm like, am I ever actually going to get this? Or did this guy just steal the money? And he did ultimately deliver. And again, he did a good job with it. But so I'd rather set the expectation that it's going to take a long time. And then if I happen to over deliver, that's better than kind of telling them really fast. And then they're getting pissed and anxious.
Yeah. Because that's the other way around, that you don't want it. Do you feel that the client, from a psychological point of view, would value what you do less if you sat down and did it in a week and delivered in a week? Do you feel that? Because that's a feeling that I get as well. That they should be happy. They should be a lot happier if you deliver the same product fast, but they're just not going to value it because they think that you copied down the 21-step sales letter template and changed 15 words on the page and then submitted that.
Right. Which is funny and ironic because I absolutely agree. Yeah, I do feel that way. But there's times, so for example, if a beat your control type situation where they have a control and like in theory, I could go in and, make several small tweaks and take like 3 hours. And if it beats their control, that's what they've hired me for. And that was what the goal was. And yet I feel like if you do that, and they paid you a lot of money for it, they would feel sort of robbed or cheated or concerned or whatever it is. But again, it's funny because all that really should matter in copy is the results. Like, do my actions bring you better results than what you already had? And so it's a funny psychological human nature thing. And so spreading it out more does actually help from that perspective.
Yeah. And I think any clients who would be listening to this would appreciate the fact that you allow for, when shit happens, because it happens to everyone, and you're allowing for extra time for to make this a proper project instead of just whipping something up. So I don't think you got any worries there. But let's go on to the RMBC method, because I was really interested to dive deep into that. And is that the formula that you've got that's at the heart of the results you've gotten?
Yeah, exactly. It is. So our MBC, it's research, mechanism, brief, and copy. And the reason it's so valuable, I'll go into each in more detail. The reason it's so valuable is because it really breaks especially on long form, it breaks the copywriting process into these very modular chunks that then make the entire task of writing a sales letter much less daunting. So with research, it is what it sounds like, it's research, but you're answering a bunch of research questions. So everything from as specific or as general, as who's your target market, like what age are they, right? Everything, we're all doing that. But then we're also looking at things like, what are their like hopes and dreams? Like what are their biggest fears? What outside forces do they believe have stopped them from living the life that they want to live? Like sum up their entire view, like their world view about life, love, family, everything in 1 to 3 sentences. So there's a bunch of just really getting deeper into their skin. This is a huge one for me, which is what are their victories and failures? I love looking at that. And then where I get the answer for most of these questions, by the way, there's several places, but one of them is going to be forums, which I love forums because you'll see both. You'll see people who are talking about success they've had in a certain area, and you'll see people who are struggling and failing and trying to understand why they're failing. And then, you just get so much gold from that. So, whether it's like a keto forum or a financial forum, and a day trading forum, it could be a self-defense forum. I mean, there's forums for everything. And then once I'm there, I'm sorting by the most views and comments, because I want to see what the market is both looking at. So if there's a subject that has a ton of views, or a forum posting that has a ton of views, but not a ton of comments, that can still be valuable, because you're like, maybe that's a good subject line almost, right? Or a good hook you can put in there. And then the comments, you're like, wow, this is a real trigger for the market, because people want to talk, they want to share their thoughts and feelings about it and everything. So I'm going through all of that, and I'm writing it down, I'm answering these questions. And then I'm going and looking at the existing solutions. What exists right now? What does the market like about it? What does the market not like about those existing solutions? What has their experience been like? And you'll get some of that from forums. Obviously, I'll go to Amazon, and then I'll just sort it by 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews, and I don't care about anything in between. So I'll go to the 5-star reviews and see what people were saying they love about a product or a guide or whatever. And then I'll go to the 1-star reviews and see what do they hate about this, same product or guide, because that's going to help me to, highlight those things that the market is liking when we're selling our products, but also address objections about, hey, you've had a poor experience with these things in the past. And then in addition to that, a few other things I look at would be any kind of conspiratorial aspects that might be there. So for example, you look at big energy or big pharma, or beliefs that maybe an existing solution was found previous to 1960, but big pharma squashed it, or big energy squashed. Tesla knew how to get free energy in 1900, and Edison and General Electric squashed it. So I want to find that kind of stuff for corruption and conspiracies, because I want to see that's really powerful and interesting as well. So and you can look at that and find these kind of, people love when these lost solutions are rediscovered. And so whether that's keto, this guy named William Banting wrote a book about on human corpulence in 1863 or something, and it basically was like the keto diet in 1863. So I haven't actually used that in a hook for a keto offer yet, but I found it through my research. And then it's that's really interesting, because you can talk about, hey, keto for weight loss has actually been known since 1863. Why has it only become popular in the last 10 years? Well, the powers that be don't want you to know about it.
Solution, could transform your body, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because people like that, and there's also always a paradise lost kind of thing that people respond very well to, where people like to think that life was simpler, easier, better purer back, you know, in the 50s or
In the
whatever
old
it was
days, yeah.
in the old days. And now there's
Yeah.
been this corruption, and now things are all terrible, which of course is true and not true, because everyone had problems in 1950 and 1930 and 18,
Yeah.
you know, but there's some kind of mythology there that people respond well to. So that's the research component, and I move to the mechanism component. Do you have any questions on the research component before I do that, though?
Only one across your mind is: do you have do you value this kind of information engagement on Facebook groups, or do you prefer forums and non-Facebook sort of things?
I prefer both, for sure. I do look at Facebook groups as well, and it's going to depend on a couple of things. I mean, there's times where I find a forum that's just so loaded that I feel like I don't really need to go to the Facebook group. So being a lazy copywriter, I may not.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm getting some good stuff on forums, but it just feels incomplete, or I feel like I really don't fully understand the market's psychology yet, then I'll definitely turn to Facebook as well. But yeah, and even like YouTube, like I used to go to YouTube a lot and read the comments in YouTube, but which I do sometimes, but there's so many troll and kind of stupid comments on YouTube as well.
I don't really like YouTube comments.
Yeah, it's kind of like not that helpful. But Facebook, definitely. Yeah, I do still go for sure. And also like news sites, right? If you're writing to conservatives and you go to Breitbart and read the comments, I mean, it's full of kind of angry vitriol for the most part. But at the same time, if that's your market, you want to kind of know, how are they talking? How are they thinking? How are they feeling? You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So cool. So then we go to the mechanism, which is going to be your unique mechanism behind the problem and your unique mechanism behind the solution. So the most important thing there is, like, I certainly didn't come up with the idea of a unique mechanism, but I think it's really important that you bifurcate, or that you split the two, because I think what happens is a lot of people try to explain what makes a product unique, but they don't explain kind of like a surprising reason behind the problem you've had. So, you know, using the easy example of weight loss, it's like, if you're like, well, you've tried diets and you've failed because most health marketers want you to fail, so you keep buying their products. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool, I guess. But if you can find this really unique reason, like there's, I'm trying to think of how I've got a couple of really good examples, but they're involved in active projects, but so I don't want to give them away. But don't
give it.
I won't give it away. But if you find a unique reason why you haven't been able to lose weight, and I mean, you know, I guess older examples would have been, I mean, back in the day, it was like the idea that you know, carbs cause weight gain and carbs cause you to be fat. Now everybody knows that, but there was a point when the Atkins diet came out where that was fairly revolutionary. And so that was a shift, because like the reason you haven't been able to lose weight is because carbs are actually making you fat. And by eliminating carbs, you can then actually lose the weight that you wanted to lose. And so now everybody knows that, but there was a time where that was a surprising, unique mechanism behind the problem, that carbs are bad. Or, you know, it might be, people have talked about like brown fat, which there's like white fat and brown fat, or there's a deep fat, right? Which I think deep fat's I don't know if it's a Golden Hippo one or who has it, but the idea of that there's regular fat in your stomach, but then there's this deeper fat, and that unless this deep fat is kind of activated and burned, then you can never get rid of your like shallow fat. You know, I'm kind of making up terminology, but saying like that, because, you know, people have failed, they've tried a lot of different solutions in the past, so they need to understand, if you can show them, here's why you failed, because this is the real, you knew 98% of the problem you understood, but here's the 2% you were missing. So it's got to be simple enough that they can grasp onto it and have like that light bulb, that light switch kind of go off, where they have that aha moment of, wow, okay, so it's just that little tweak, that little thing I didn't understand. So that's where the unique mechanism behind the problem is so important. And then logically, you can then connect that to the unique mechanism behind the solution, right? Because you're like, okay, so if deep fat is being stored and most weight loss programs or supplements or diets don't target deep fat, then the solution is to target deep fat, right? I mean, it's a very simple, logical kind of connection, but the unique mechanism of the solution only will fully make sense once they've accepted and understand the unique mechanism of the problem. And then you can go into more detail and be like, so how do you destroy deep fat? Well, your body contains blah, blah, blah. And by taking these ingredients, activate, you know, some enzyme or whatever your solution is, and go from there. But there's that logical connection between those two things. And so that's super crucial. I think a lot of people are afraid, like for my copy accelerator program I'm doing, I'm actually talking about mechanisms tomorrow. I think people get afraid of them because they don't want to do research, or they're afraid of over explaining things, or sounding too scientific. And those are all concerns. I think one of the challenges with that, especially in a health offer, is wanting to make sure that you are being really conversational and really dumbing it down, and sounding like excited, like enthusiastic. Like, I think some people aren't, a lot of copywriters aren't science people, like, right? They're creatives, and that's what's going on. So then when they have to explain science, they feel like they're reporting like a school report, and that's how they feel, but then it's reflected in their copy, and then your eyes glaze over and it's boring and it sucks. But if you can be like, oh my God, this is the most exciting discovery ever. This is like, Columbus, discovering North America in 1492. This is like, Newton discovering the laws of gravity. This is like so important. This is going to change everything. And you can have that excitement and then convey that through your writing with the mechanism, then the market tends to stick with you. And they're going to be really true believers, because once they believe that they really believe that they failed for a reason other than what they understood before, and then they really believe that there is a way to actually fix that, they're just more likely to buy the solution, as long as your solution is tied in, or your product is tied in to the solution you've presented.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so how do I figure that out? I guess is one question, right? How do I figure out the unique mechanism? That comes back to research. It is a big question. There's a couple of different places, through the research phase that I go through. So R and RMBC, you'll sometimes find the kernel of the unique mechanism. If you're looking at, articles and blogs and forums and people, you'll end up finding interesting things or beliefs, or some, people may be like, oh, and we all know that this is the real reason why. And then if I see something like that there, that's great. And I'll take it and I'll research more. Or, I'll just sort of use Google a lot, as funny as it sounds. And I'll Google for health, I'll go to sciencedaily.com a ton. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's, all these new discoveries all the time. So they're constantly sharing new discoveries. And it's kind of funny because, in the same month, you might have 20 different, causes of diabetes have been discovered. So they're all kind of conflicting and different, but they just report it all. But it's actually a treasure trove for finding, mechanisms. But even, it doesn't have to be like, if you're doing like dating, with dating stuff too, I think you can also take like existing principles and then just add in like call it something new, right? So if there's, what's a good example? I mean, just if it's something about sort of pre-framing or, I forget the terminology for it, basically kind of subtly getting a woman to be interested in you without her realizing it, right? You can sort of call it like, I don't know, sexual embedment, right? And so there's times like that where you can then take like existing concepts, put a cool name on them, and then make it sound like a discovery when it's not. So that's another way that you can do it. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, what happens when you come across a product or something that you're writing for that you just can't find any unique mechanism or even any kind of hook about it. Okay, that's the problem we all come up against. Sometimes it's just hard to find, and sometimes the product doesn't have one at all.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like really, it would depend. I mean, I'm generally personally trying not to ever do something for those products.
True.
But you can so like probiotics, like I really don't ever want to write another probiotic sales letter as long as I live. Just because it's like kind of that way, right? It's like your gut is filled with bacteria, and it can be good or bad. And when the balance of bad bacteria becomes greater than the balance of good bacteria, it causes what's called dysbiosis, and you get like you're bloated and gassy, and it affects your health in all these ways. But I do think actually you can almost always find one. If you're selling like staples, then that might be tough, right? But even then, ideally, you're finding some technology. But if you're doing anything at all unique, like I think if it's your product and you don't have anything like that, then why the fuck are you selling that? Unless you're on Amazon and you rank like I know guys who make millions of dollars a month just selling like nuts, bolts, screws, really boring stuff on Amazon. And so in that case, like great. And then you really are. It's very kind of like feature driven, and it's sort of like made with industrial like steel, made in America, made in a high quality thing, like whatever. You can still do stuff, but generally I think you can. I mean, even with Holy Land Health, and I had a blood sugar supplement called HL12. And I mean, honestly, it was like the stock formulation that everybody can get for blood sugar. So it's been around for forever, but I basically found a way to tie those ingredients to the Bible because, for example, it has guggle, which is also known as muckle myrrh. So, okay, myrrh, great. The, three wise men.
Yeah, three wise men, yeah.
Yeah. And you had another one that came from like the Bucharest, like family of plants, which also includes frankincense. So, oh, okay, great. Right. Yeah. And then like, how do you do gold? What I did actually is it had a bunch of essential minerals and elements in it. I looked at the periodic table, and basically a lot of them came in this one section of the periodic table that was like a burnt orange, brown, almost gold. So I was like, these are the golden elements from the periodic table, and start putting these in as well. So now you've got your frankincense, gold and myrrh, and tying that all together, and then, just quoting scripture. And so, the thing, and that thing, was doing $1 million plus a month for sustained period of time, over a year, a year and a half, 2 years even. But, right. So all I did is I took something that anybody could have sold, and I just sold it in a different way. So in that sort of situation as well, you can, sometimes a story a really strong discovery story can substitute for the unique mechanism, right? So that would be the one way to maybe get around it if there's not a unique mechanism.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's about selling the story rather than the thing, So that's how you get around it, and that's really interesting. How all those examples that you gave are really valuable.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And then that's one thing to note, like the mechanism is super important, but you're doing that after the lead and the background story and stuff like that. So you're not, you'd want to hint at a unique mechanism in the lead, right? You'd want to hint at some surprising discovery, or, a contrarian thing, like why, you thought that why XYZ don't actually help you to accomplish this, but this little known surprising thing does. But one mistake I'll actually see a lot of copywriters make is trying to explain the mechanism in the lead of the copy. They start going into, science too much, and it's just like not the place for it. Because all you're trying to do, as and most of us good copywriters know, is get someone who read or watched the first line to now do the second one and the third one and the fourth one. I mean, all you're trying to do. And so that's just a huge mistake people make, is trying to explain the mechanism too much. Or I have seen copywriters who I've trained on the unique mechanism and who have written better copy, but then they start obsessing too much over it to the point where it's like 4,000 words of science. And you're like, dude, like you just don't need that much either, right? It needs to be enough to convince them and to be credible, but you don't need to it's not a science textbook. So there is a fine line there, and it's worth kind of, pointing that out for sure.
It's a good point too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so after research and the mechanism, which is divided into the unique mechanism of the problem and the solution, we're going to the brief, which for me, it's really just my questionnaire, but I'm not sending that to a client. And I like to talk with clients. If they have existing resources, that's great. But I'm never one of those copywriters who's sending out a questionnaire where it's kind of like, hey, give me all your research, give me everything you have. They'll let you know if they have the research and they give it to you. That can be very beneficial and helpful. But I don't really want that much from them. I want to do that on my own because I'm going to write better copy. So again, I depending on the sophistication of the client, they may have a ton of data and analytics, and they've tested angles. So I do want to know all of that. And so I'll ask them if they have that kind of stuff. But again, I'm not really sending them this questionnaire of sort of things, because I don't want their research, because that might not tie into I might find better research than they have. And so my brief is sort of this questionnaire. But the nice thing is you're applying components of the research part and the mechanism part into the brief. So, right, the first question is kind of like, who's the target market? Like, describe the target market, which you have from research. And then you're looking at, what are their major short-term and long-term pain points? And you've got that from your research as well. So you're plugging that right in. You're looking at what's the big promise that you're going to make them about how to reverse those pain points. So, right, if these are their pain points, what are you telling them that's going to make those pain points or that pain point go away? And you're writing that out, which is important because now you have your big promise for your sales copy and for the product. We're looking at existing solutions. What have they tried in the past? Why didn't they work? Which is, again, from the research component. We're looking at, what's the surprising reason why, what's the surprising solution? What's, why did they fail 99% of the time? And why is this different? And so now you have your mechanism and you're plugging that right into it. A few other unique things you have are, like metaphors. Like I like to write out some metaphors in my brief, and I'll usually get those through research and the mechanism part. I've got ideas turning in my head as you read. Sometimes people just share great metaphors for you during the research component, or you come up with them. But I think those are very important because obviously it's easy to understand through metaphors. Like if you're talking about a bucket with a hole in it or whatever it is. I mean, there's just simple things that make it easier to understand. Paradoxical questions, which I've talked about a lot, which I really love. This is something that Dan Reitman did in the Pimsleur approach, and a lot of other people do it too. But basically, this question of that seems obvious, but that people don't have a great answer to. So with Pimsleur, it was like, why is it that it's so easy for a child to learn multiple languages, but it's so hard for an adult to learn, right? So that's one that you stop and you think about, and you're like, why is that? And then, the answer, this ties into the mechanism as well, because kids, learn in this really innate, natural way, but adults are taught in these sort of course, like curriculum type ways that just aren't in tune with how we naturally learn languages. And so our product is going to show you how to learn like a child learns, which is way easier. So it's a simple question, but it sets up so much, because once you have that, you understand why you haven't been able to learn a language before. You understand how this is different. There's a proof element, because nobody can argue with the fact that a child learns language very easily. And, you always hear stories about the kid who's got a nanny, so he speaks like, English and Spanish at the age of 4 or whatever it is. And so I love trying to find paradoxical questions there. And it can be as simple as, it should be something that people know is true though, right? So if people are like, that's one mistake people make with the paradoxical question is it can be like, like I know that 95% of my cholesterol is formed of this like compound. So why is it that this compound's not, being treated for my high, or why are we not attacking this compound for my high cholesterol? But people don't know that, right? Nobody knows about whatever that compound is. It's a random example I'm making up. But it should be something that's obvious. Like, why do why do the Japanese live longer than everybody else, right? Why the French paradox is the really famous one. Why are the French able to
get cancer?
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, why shark? That's a great one. I love it. So exactly, so stuff like that, or just so many of them. Why don't dogs get diabetes? Whatever it is. Love stuff like that. And so I'm trying to think about those in the context of my copy. I'm looking at the background story, which normally I either, depending on the client and what's happening there, I've usually already know that just from talking with the client and finding out, what the story is. And then through the research and the mechanism, especially, I'm finding out the story of the discovery, because I'm tying it into the scientific kind of discoveries, if it's a health thing, or, the unique mechanism, which is sort of going to be part of the story. Like, but it's always kind of the same, right? Like, well, there's a couple of versions actually, I guess. There's like, I was in pain, I was struggling. I had some trigger event that sort of, set me off on this journey of realizing I have to change. And so I looked for solutions. Out of the box solutions didn't work. But I found like a, solution that seemed like it would work. And I had a trial and error period. And at first it wasn't great. And then it was. And then I ultimately had to sell this product to the public because other people, weren't doing it. Maybe a story like that, or it can be the health expert who is recounting the story of somebody they know who had that struggle, or an investment, expert who's talking about how he sees all these people who keep getting played by the stock market, and he realized that he has to like come in and teach people how to do it. And maybe it comes to head when some woman he knows like loses her house because she makes bad investments. But the story is pretty similar, but I'm writing that out in the sales copy or in the brief. And then the product itself, the product description, I'm writing that out as well. And I'm trying to get pretty specific. I'd rather write out almost like if it was going to be in the copy, to write it in the brief like that. So, like what it is, what are the features and benefits, of course, fascinations for it, if fascinations are applicable. So, especially on info products or ebooks, fascinations are generally so important. All that. Yeah, me too. I love fascinations. That was one of the things, I think one of the single things, and I guess this would be good advice for, if there's copywriters who watch this who are earlier on in their journey. One of the single fastest ways to write better copy is to study fascinations and just practice them a lot and then start adding them to your copy. And, you can put them, I generally put them most often in the lead. And then when talking about the product, you can figure out how to work them into other parts of the copy too. But
for sure.
For me, but yeah. And then other than that, I'm just looking at maybe if there's any, headline ideas, because by the time I've written the brief, I'll be like, do I have any ideas for what the headline could be? And, if I'm coming up with upsells for the client, which I really prefer not to do, but I've had to in the past and stuff, I'm write logical upsell ideas, and they are a logical connection, right? Because that's another thing that's super important. It's like either sell more of the same thing or sell something that's really clearly connected. Like if you're doing, something for, even if it's one way to lose weight and the first upsell is how to increase your metabolism even more, which I guess is more of the same thing to an extent. But, or if, you're cleaning your gut, but now that you've cleaned your gut, you need to put something back in it. So now buy this probiotic. So step one is a gut cleanse and upsell one is like a probiotic, mixture or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
when you buy a marketing course and the upsell is a traffic course.
Exactly. Right. That's great. Like, hey, now you're gonna know how to market, but what does it matter how great your funnels are if nobody sees them?
Exactly.
Totally. Okay. So that's RMB, and then C is just going to be copy. And for that, I have a pretty standard outline, which I'm going to let your viewers or listeners kind of get for free. I can share that now or later or whatever. But basically, at that point, we're just taking and plugging in everything from the brief into the copy, right? So you're looking at the lead, which it's kind of like a checklist. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to open up my kind of outline here so I can run through it without forgetting anything.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, better than, but the way the things I have, the elements I mainly have here for the lead, right, would be calling out the problem, promising a solution to the pain point, promising to save time and money, teasing an emotional discovery story, assuming there is one, teasing the unique mechanism behind the solution. So again, teasing it, not giving it away. Ideally teasing the contrarian nature of the mechanism, right? That this flies in the face of what you've been told before. Working in fascinations as an incentive for continuing with the copy. So, in fact, like, whatever interesting fascination, and I'll explain why, in 5 minutes from now, in a couple of moments, I'm going to show you why this is the case. So working in fascinations. Briefly mentioning credibility builders. That's another thing that I think is kind of crazy. I see sales letters sometimes that are pretty successful, but where the narrator is just talking the entire time without ever telling you who he is or she is. And that kind of blows my mind because I'm like, why people want to kind of know who they're hearing from? Like, who are you? Like, why are you talking to me?
Yeah.
And if it's just like the voice of God talking, that's kind of weird, right? So I think the credibility builders, both for the person, like who that person is, who the avatar or the spokesperson, as well as then credibility builders about, whatever, like if it's health and Harvard, it's based on Harvard studies, or, you're in the financial space and you're like, this is, in fact, Ronald Reagan's former financial advisor said that this was the smartest thing you could do with your money if you're over the age of 55, or, whatever it is, just having credibility builders in there. Qualifiers I think are important too, like who this works for. Like, is it for everyone? Is it for a certain subset? Speaking to your market. And I think that's very important because we're generally not trying to sell everything to everybody. And so I'd rather, if it's weight loss, it's just such an easy example. So I go to weight loss a lot, but it's like, yeah, it works if you're 18 or 90, if you have 10 pounds to lose or 100 pounds to lose. Or there are times where, again, you're calling out a specific group. So going back to like a Christian supplement, it's like, every Christian must watch this urgent video. There's an unholy war being declared against us by the atheist scientists who control modern medicine. I mean, it's very us versus them. And but I'm calling out my tribe or my who I'm talking to. I'm qualifying the market. I'm briefly addressing skepticism because obviously, the market sees a lot of these offers. They've seen a lot of solutions. And so, it's generally being like, and even though this may sound hard to believe now, or even if you've tried solutions in the past and been burned or whatever it is, like, I totally get it, but stick with me and I'm going to give you the proof that what I'm saying is different. And then, you're generally ending the lead component with some broad testimonials, not about the product specifically, but about the solution. So rather than being like, supplement X helped me to, manage my blood sugar better. You're just saying, wow, like this solution was great. And it really helped me to have more energy and, curb my erratic blood sugar, whatever it may be. And so, that's basically my lead. Then I'm going into the background story. So obviously just the who am I, the credibility builders, again, like more about, I mentioned this briefly. Let me tell you more about who I am. Me or someone close to you was in pain, and here's the emotional story about it. Traditional solutions aren't working. There's a trigger event, like I mentioned, that the pain point is escalated to where, avatar or whoever's story is being told realizes that something must change. They search for truth and answers, and ultimately either they start to find them in the unique mechanism of the problem, which we'll get to in a minute, or maybe sometimes like a wise, like sensei person appears who tells them that they're going to reveal the truth that's been hidden. So if you're doing like a guru letter and there's a guy who is struggling and he meets this guru, and then the guru is now going to tell them, why it is that they've been broke when he's been rich or whatever it is. From there, so again, lead, background story, unique mechanism of the problem, which we've talked about in a lot of detail, right? So as they're looking for truth and answers, they find out or realize that there's a real reason they've been failing, and it was this. And then you're going to part 4 of the sales letter, which is going to be your unique mechanism of the solution, which is, again, logically, now that you know the real reason you failed, here's how you can really succeed. And again, just sort of, you might start very broad and then go into more specifics of the unique mechanism of the solution. So, it might be broadly, you weren't burning deep fat. Great. Now here's how you can burn deep fat. And then here are the answers. Again, credibility, proof elements, if it's a supplement, citation, scientific sources, social proof, whatever you need to have there. So then part 5 for me would be the product build up and reveal, which is, now that the avatar knows the solution, he or she looks for an out of the box version, something that will just end their quest and solve the problem right there. But of course, out of the box solutions are flawed. So, either the avatar has to do it themselves and create a new solution, or they find that one rogue person who has created the solution and they work with them to bring it to the public. And ideally, even better if the avatar is creating the solution themselves, then, if they sort of test it and they see a little bit of success, but there are problems or setbacks and they keep going, and eventually they have this success, and here's some proof that the product works, right? Other people are asking for it and the product is born. And then in the close, I kind of include the product description in the close, because I think you're starting to get to the close once you get there. So product details, right? Like what's included, what makes it special, unique selling propositions. You're, discussing dismissing other alternatives because they're expensive or side effects or poor quality or unproven. You're including more testimonials and you're layering that in there. You're telling them specifically how to use the product. I think that's important in the copy, not an entire instruction manual, but at least a couple lines. So again, if it's a supplement, take 2 pills per day in the morning. Or if it's a, DIY aquaponics thing, like basically, you'll get 5 steps. You'll do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're giving you the guide. It's very easily laid out. Whatever it is. Scarcity, demand's high, supplies are limited, out of stocks are common. Any kind of additional urgency about the powers that be, want you to not share this. Ideally, like a personal mission, right? Like that's the avatar's personal mission to make things better. I told you about the sob story. I don't want more people to suffer this similar sob story. And so, this is my mission. So it's not about money, which is why, even though I could charge you a bunch of money, I'm going to charge you less money, right? Inherent in that too, obviously the justification about specifically dimensionalizing the price of other stuff. Like, you could pay $1,000 a month for this, or, $500 a month for this. And even this would cost you like $250 a month, which is whatever it is over the course of a year. Can't do math great, over $4,000, whatever. Call to actions. What happens after you click the button? Super simple, but I see people forget that sometimes. If you have bonuses, revealing the bonuses, the guarantee, of course, more calls to action, typically closing it with 2 choices, right? You have 2 paths in front of you, 2 roads. You can kind of do the path that you've been on that hasn't gotten you results. And if you do that, what's going to change? Einstein said the definition of insanity was, making the same mistake over and over again and not learning from it. Why would you be insane? Why would you keep making that same mistake when you have the other option, the other path, which is to try this new novel solution that now you understand it works. You know in your heart that this could work. You're protected by the guarantee. You've got, 60 days, 180 days, whatever it is. So if I'm full of shit, there's no risk. Like literally, why would you not try this when nothing's worked in the past? Don't you need to try something new? And so that's why, this makes the most sense, but you really do have to act now. This presentation is ending. The powers that be want this up. I don't know how long it'll be available for. I might run out of inventory, whatever your reason is. Call to action. Thank you for watching. And then your FAQs. So that's the outline. Hopefully, I have a tendency to talk fast, and I'm actually intentionally trying not to talk too fast, but I'm sure I still am talking a little fast. But
it sounds good.
Good.
It's quite good, and it's a huge outline too. It's very comprehensive, and what you just went through is probably better than most copywriting courses that I've had, because it kind of covers the whole thing. So you haven't left anything out, so that's really awesome.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and just one quick note on that.
Go on.
I'm sorry, just real quick on that. Just one note. It's going back to, if you look at the mechanism in the brief, right? Because again, in the lead, you already kind of, between the RMB part, you know what your emotional discovery is, you know what your unique mechanism is, you know what the product is, you know kind of like the skepticism, the pain points that the market has already faced. You know how to shit on traditional solutions. Basically so much of this stuff already that when it comes to writing, it's not that hard. You have to write a good lead, and there's, you can model off other leads. If you're a good lead writer already, awesome. The background story is very formulaic. It's very predictable. And as long as you know the background story, you can layer in from your research additional pain points and dimensionalize them and highlight them. And a huge part of the sales letter, probably 2,000 to 3,000 words or 1,500 to 3,000 words, is going to be the mechanism component, but you've already done all of that. So you basically just drag and drop it in there. You get to the product, you've already written out what the product is in your brief. So, that part's right there. The close is extremely formulaic. You generally have the same close again and again. And so going back to how I can write super fast, because it's so templatized, by the time it comes to write the sales letter, I already have all my work done. And then I have this modular sort of like multi-step thing. So then even my sales letter is broken down into these little pieces. And if I'm like, man, I don't want to do the lead right now, then I'm like, fuck it, I'll skip the lead and I'll start with the background story and I'll write that. And I have the mechanism and whatever, but I just feel you're in so much more control. And so that's why I'm able to write copy so fast, is because of that. So I just want to kind of highlight again, to tie it all together, why that's so important.
Yeah, it's crucial, and it's got such massive benefits. Writing fast is just one of them. So let's get people that outline that you mentioned. How can they get their hands on that?
Yeah, for sure. If you go to Copy and Funnel Accelerator, so copyandfunnelaccelerator.com/Geniuses of Copywriting, there's going to be a little squeeze page opt-in, put your name and your email address in, and then you'll have access to the outline. And you also get access to the video recording of my mastermind talk at Traffic and Conversion with Justin, where I talk about this stuff as well, and probably more detail today than there, but there are a lot of other interesting kind of things that come up, including some stuff on Facebook compliance, how we're selling blood sugar on Facebook without massive headaches, and some other things too. So super valuable. There's no I don't have an email sequence set up. You're not going to get hit on it. My hope is there is a video about my Copy Accelerator program I'm doing with Justin, which, where I'm teaching copy every single week. I'm not to give a pitch on it, but to explain what it is, right? Basically, there's a weekly Zoom call. So I'm walking people through the RMBC method in detail. We're dissecting, critiquing copy, both mine and other people's. Justin's talking about upsells, back-end kind of optimization, things like that, mostly from a copy perspective. And there's a Facebook group where people are, asking questions. It's very active. And then there's a platinum level and a gold level. Platinum people can actually bring copy to the call and get feedback. That's at its cap right now. We set it at 20 people and we hit that. And we've got about 50 people in the program. So anyway, there is a video once you opt in to get the outline and watch my mastermind talk, because obviously I think it's an incredible value and an awesome program. So I want people to hear about it, but that there's not even, you won't get as of now, a bunch of emails or autoresponders or anything like that.
But I was going to ask, there's still spots available in the lower tier, not the top one, but the lower one. Yeah,
exactly, for gold. And that's sort of the way we designed it, to be honest, is gold from our perspective is a more scalable side because it doesn't have that feedback portion.
Yeah.
But it's still really valuable. The gold group is loving it because
sure.
You've got me and Justin talking copy again, teaching, training, and then the Facebook group, people are bringing a lot of cool stuff, and not only that, but you have a ton of really good marketers. I mean, like Agora, a bunch of Agora guys are in it. Natural Health Sherpa, Healthy Back. You've got Dan Locke's teams in it. Like just a ton of guys. Alan Baylor for Patriots is in, not Alan Baylor, but for Patriots is in it. And so the point is, Alvin Huang from TrueGenX, I can keep going, but because of that, it's a really cool group. So people are asking questions about both copy, but even some of their funnel stuff. And you've got this like all-star list of experts who are responding to comments and questions in the Facebook group. And that's all included in the gold. There's 2 live events per year. So gold is still extremely valuable. And frankly, very cost effective too. I mean, it's like less than $2,000 a month for gold. And when you look at it that way, it's pretty crazy, value.
Yeah, for sure. I highly recommend that listeners get along and check that out, because if you want to take your copy to the next level, I think that's a place you can really do it. But at least go and get that sales letter outline, because that's really valuable. It doesn't cost anything. And I'll chuck a link on the page when I put this episode up on the site. If you're listening on iTunes, it was copyandfunnels.com.
Copy and funnel. It's actually it's a long domain for now, but copyandfunnelaccelerator.com.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And then / Geniuses of Copywriting.
Yeah. We should probably find a bit.ly link for that or something.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
We're changing the name of it actually to Copy Accelerator, just because we realized that that's what most people were the most interested in. However, somebody took copyaccelerator.com, so we're trying to buy that domain. If you own it and you're listening, first of all, F you, but second of all, hit me up and we can talk price or whatever. But yeah.
But for now, it's copyandfunnelaccelerator.com / Geniuses of Copywriting. Yeah, I'll put a link on the page. Go to that URL if you're listening on iTunes. And I strongly suggest that you do what Stefan just laid out was an amazing plan. But what's going to be even more valuable is to watch that video and get the PDF for yourself with the outline. That's a whole copywriting course in itself, and it will be really a good idea if you join the Copy Accelerator program as well, Copy and Funnel Accelerator program. While there's still spots available, because they'll fill up soon, I'm sure. But I'd like to really thank you for sharing all of that. It went a bit longer than some of our episodes do, but it was totally worth it. It was I keep saying it was a copywriting course in itself, but you could take what you've shared here and run with that. It'd probably be a lot easier if you go and get the outline and join the program as well. But what you've shared here has been really valuable. So I'd really like to thank you for sharing all of that with us and sharing your valuable time. It is appreciated, and we'll have to do this again sometime. Yeah,
absolutely. It's my pleasure, and really appreciate you having me on. And I can definitely be a little bit long-winded, but hopefully people who listen or watch can take this. I really believe that a process it's so important. It's like trying to swim upstream versus swimming downstream. It's night and day.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stefan. I appreciate you coming on. You're a true genius of copywriting.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Geniuses of Copywriting with Brian Casangina. To get the full transcript and all the resources mentioned on today's show, go to www.geniusesofcopywriting.com now.